everyone, this is Leo from the Monkeys Making News Place channel. Today we'll be doing Prism deck profile. This deck is actually one that I actually thought wasn't going to be that strong, and then when I got my hands on it, I couldn't stop messing with the deck. And this is my latest iteration, and something I call Order Prism. I haven't really seen a lot of deck profiles for this deck online, but this is the current iteration of what I like to play, and it's actually pretty good. It's pretty strong. A lot of filtering allows you to not have to just do a lot of blind draw, which means you get to be very picky about what you get from the deck, which means you thin the deck very effectively. And then with being able to bounce your units to hand, you just get to keep so much hand advantage that it's okay to play some orders to get some of the benefits. As you can see in the ride line, I'm playing the Ballista ride line because we do play a lot of orders, and it's just, I didn't even like this ride line more than I like the regular Prism one, because it doesn't really do anything. It just kind of just searches for cards, and we already have enough filtering with the stuff that we'll be talking about later. But these two cards are actually really useful. You get to just play the Ballista card, the new order that they received in, I think it was the Festival Collection, no, the Festival Booster 2023. You get to play that order, and it's so good to just be able to draw two cards off of the grade 2 and then the order. But let's quickly talk about Labrador herself. So Labrador has two abilities. The first one is you can Soul Blast one to choose a rear guard, bounce it to hand, and then she gains +5. You might think, well, that's not the greatest ability, but it allows you to reuse a lot of your on-play skills, which is quite a few of them. And then her second ability is that when she attacks, you can Counter Blast one, choose one of your 2 unit cards with Prism in their names from your hand, call them to open rear. Specifically has to be open rear, so you have to make sure your circles are empty. Then if you call a card, you get to draw a card. Then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, until end of turn, all of your front row units gets +5k, and she gains a crit. So your Vanguard's critical if you go second, which is actually pretty good. You do like to go first because you can still perform 5 attacks going first. You just don't get that extra 5k, but power's not a big issue with this deck, as you'll see. But we're going to divide this into 2 main sections and then a final section, which will just be the triggers and it'll just be the triggers. So for the first section, we're just going to be talking about the Prism cards themselves. So we have 3 copies of Labrador. We have 4 copies of Celtic that allows you to bounce it and another Prism card, which can be your Labrador, or it could be the last Prism card, Leyte. These are way too high. What about right there? I think that's better. Yeah, that's better. Leyte, it can, whenever she's bounced to hand, if you have Vanguard with Labrador, you can Soul Charge one, and then you can, if you haven't Counter Charged, you can Counter Charge one. So you get a Counter Charge every turn. Both Celtic and Leyte have an ability when they're placed on rear from hand or on Guardian Circle, they gain +5k power or +5k shield, depending on where they are. As long as you have a Vanguard with Labrador, which you will. Then the last card for this section is pretty much the one of 2 support units, but we're only playing this one, and it's 4 copies of Petronil. She is, when she's placed on rear, you can Counter Blast one, check top 7 for a card with Prism, which will be either one of these 3. Add it to your hand, and if you don't reveal a card, you can Soul Charge 2, which sometimes you will do, even if you find one of these in the top 7, because you do need Soul. Obviously, Leyte will give you a Soul every time she's bounced, so you can bind it with this. You never really net Soul because Celtic costs a Soul Blast, and Leyte will give you one, so you'll always end up even. But with Petronilla, you can Soul Charge 2, so you'll get some extra Soul. That's pretty much all the things you need for the Prism deck. This is it. These are all the cards that are really key for that deck. So we have a lot of room left over, and that's where we look at the order units. So first off, we're looking at 4 copies of Strega and 4 copies of Aura. So Strega is great because if you have 3 Soul on your grade 2 turn and you play an order, you get to play her, get her ability, then use Labrador, bounce her back, then play her again, and be able to thin the deck of 2 units or 2 orders. So that's pretty good, and as well as like having that attack trigger, which you probably won't see happen except for certain scenarios. That attack trigger is probably never going to happen. She's more of I would describe her as a additional order effect to all your orders, right? If you play any of the order cards that we'll talk about next, she essentially just becomes a Alchemagic kind of effect, where you play her as well, and then you get to thin another card on top of whatever the other orders effect. We are playing an order that allows us to bounce her back but it's more of like a niche thing. She's really just an extender to search your pieces, right? I mean, we have Petronil already, but with this, you can just find your prism units. And then for Aura is just great on hit pressure. You get to search for orders, which we're clearly playing quite a decent amount of, so she's perfect. Obviously, being 6k is a little lackluster, but we do have a boost in power from the prism units. But now let's talk about the orders we're playing. We have 3 copies of Sweet, 2 copies of Crossing Illumirays, 2 copies of Pretty Demon Core, and then we are playing the Elementaria Sanctitude and the 3 PGs. Right, these are going to move out of its way because obviously Sanctitude is a card you can search off for Aura, which is very good. It's a thing that Lyrical can do, so you can just find yourself a PG. But let's talk about these orders. So, Pretty Demon Cord is you can choose one of your rear guards, and it gets at the end of your turn, you return this unit to your hand, and then at the end of turn, you can discard a card to get it back. If you have 2 of these, right, and you don't hit a Sweet, you can just play it, get yourself one of the Stregas that you probably leave on board, and it'll just bounce back to hand at the end of turn. And then if you have extras, you can just ditch them to get the other back, whatever way you feel like doing it. And then this Crossing Illumirays is for the Willista Ride line. It allows you to draw 2 cards. I used to play 1, but you can get it damaged, and then your ride line's pretty much doing nothing. So we play the 2 just to be safe. If you feel risky, you can definitely play the 1. But you could whiff and then not hit anything. If you don't think of getting this, you could always just play the original Everlasting Sapphire. It doesn't draw you a card, or it doesn't draw you an extra card, it just makes a soul and gives power, but it's still pretty good. And then Sweet, this is the card that I think is so good, because at grade 2 you can play it, but you're probably going to be playing the gem. But starting from there, you can Counterblast on, check top 5, and call any unit to rear. So you can hit a Prism, you can hit a Aura, you can hit a Petronilla, and then you can just keep filtering. This being not being a random, because you still check top 5, you're always going to hit something, hopefully, right? Obviously you could hit 5 triggers or a bunch of orders, but that's not really going to happen. You want to be able to play one of these and then combo off with Strega to essentially not have to waste any board, because off of just these 3 cards, let me move these out of the way, just off of these 3 cards, which one of them is your Vanguard, and just having your soul, you can play this, or excuse me, play Sweet, get a unit, play Strega, get another unit, then bounce the Strega with Labrador, play the Strega again, and you've gotten 3 units off of just these cards without having to commit anything, and you have 4 units on board. Obviously, you could hit orders or whatever, but you have 4 units for pretty much no commitment from hand off of just these 2 cards, because Labrador you always have access to Labrador. It's your Vanguard, right? So this means you can keep your hand size, you can guard early. This costs a CB and 3 soul, but your deck can make it if really need be. And the counter charge, you only ever really need a CB a turn, because if you play this and then you use Late to bounce back with Celtic, she'll just counter charge and give you the CB you need for Labrador. So that means that this is pretty much doable every turn. Obviously, the Strega will just stay on board, but that's fine if they retire the Strega or if they make you hit yourself with it. That's fine. I know Shiranui is a prominent deck, but there is no better way to get this much advantage. I mean, you get 3 units for off of just these 2 cards, which I think is really good. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's great to not have to commit to board and be able to keep a giant hand size. I've had up to like 15 cards in hand playing this deck, just because I don't have to commit. I don't have to waste cards from my hand. I can just filter and filter and filter. And then you sing with Vanguard. Vanguard is the only time you'll do a blind draw besides the Willista Ride line, but it's fine. It's just a card. But with this deck, you up the chances of hitting a trigger so much, because you're filtering. You get to pick here, you get to pick here, you get to pick off of Petronilla, right? You get to pick off of, where is she? Aura. So you're thinning the deck specifically of non-triggers, which means that your chances of getting a trigger are so much higher. But let's just talk about the last things so that you guys can move along. Obviously, triggers. We're playing the Lyrical OT because that huge power boost to our board is pretty much just going to be game over. We don't really need things to get recurred from the graveyard, because We get to protect most of our stuff by just bouncing it to hand, and we already have 5 attacks, so we don't really need the red OT either. Then we play a full set of fronts for that added shield that might come up, because we do play a lot of orders, so we do need some extra shield. And then we play 7 criticals, because they just, I mean, it's pressure. What else can you say? You could play the soul crit. I don't play it currently because it's not really as relevant. And then 4 heals. But yes, this is the order version of Prism. I think it's actually pretty strong, and it can probably do some stuff against what the current metagame is. Currently, well, that shadow is so large. Let me do this. Let me do it like this. There you go. It can actually do some things, because you could play against Shirnu. You can make sure you leave an empty board, right? Against Luar, you can aggro them super quickly. They won't be able to catch up if you go in first, right? Their stride decks usually sometimes pick to go second, so they can stride right away. So you can pressure them with 5 attacks right off the bat with some insane power, with your Celtic and your Late both being able to gain plus 5k, even committing to just leaving a Strega on board to get that extra draw, and 10k makes a 20k attacker. It's pretty good. Yeah, in that scenario, you can always choose to just make a 4 attack turn instead of a 5 attack turn, which is just fine. Being able to thin so effectively is a great strength of this deck. I could not recommend a deck more. It is on the expensive side, as you've seen. Strega is expensive. I believe Aura is decently expensive. So, deck's not cheap, but it is very strong, I think. And I'll probably be taking this to locals soon. I'm thinking of going this next weekend. It is a bit of a drive, but I'm really excited to play this deck competitively. But with that, this has been Leo. Thank you all for watching.